Good morning and welcome to this presentation. Is your IT security up to date? And my name is Susan. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of my background. So I've been a Microsoft trainer for nearly 30 years. And can I just check, Rachel, that you can actually see these bullet
I
points?
can, yeah. They're
Fantastic.
flicking through fine.
Lovely. Training individuals and primarily going into companies and training staff on Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so on. I can also provide course development on bespoke courses for specific software, which also I can provide technical authoring, i.e. creating user handouts and so on. And I provide Microsoft 365 support for micro business owners. So this is business founders who need help setting up their IT when they set their business up and then managing it through their business growth. So I'd be very grateful if you just tell me a little bit about yourself. Really, I'd like to know, do you feel knowledgeable about your IT security options, and do you feel you have everything in place for your IT security? Rachel, over to you.
Okay, so as you know, I'm Rachel Moore from Rachel Moore Social Media. Um, do you feel knowledgeable about IT security options? Probably not. I think I've probably got the most basic things going on. And do I feel that I have in place all the IT security features available? Definitely not, no, because generally speaking, I don't understand what they all are.
Yeah, okay, fine. Now that's really useful to know, and I don't think you're alone on that in any way. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much. So with that in mind, what I'm going to cover is we're going to talk about password security, two-factor authentication. I want to show you a feature that's available with Microsoft, which is called Personal Vault, just so that you're aware it's available. We'll also talk about when you're connecting to the internet, things to think about for your PC security, and also mobile phone considerations as well when you're thinking about your security. So let's crack straight on. And I want to talk about passwords. So passwords really are the kind of bedrock of your security, and that's where you get started. And you need to make sure that your passwords are difficult for hackers to work out as much as possible. And there's lots of debate about what is the best password to use for an account. What I've been recommended in the past is to use 3-word passwords. So for example, here is a 3-word password: cat, dog, horse. So you can see where the 3 words are, but it's not as easy for somebody to try and work out. If a lot of accounts will ask you to add a number and a special character, and you can just add those at the end. Also, I find that 3-word passwords are much easier to remember. So you can remember the 3 words, and then you've only got to remember the sort of special characters at the end, which most of the time you can remember. And then very importantly, of course, never use the same password twice. So the various M&S breaches that have happened over the years have exposed how many people reuse passwords, and which then, of course, once the hackers have downloaded the data from somewhere like M&S, they can then access your bank accounts, your email accounts, and so on. So you want to make sure that you never use the same password twice. Now, Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge all give you the ability to store these passwords in your browser, which then obviously makes the whole process a lot quicker for you. However, things to think about is if your Google account or your Microsoft account is hacked for any reason, those passwords are all stored with those accounts. And again, the hackers then have access to your passwords. So ideally, you really only want to store passwords in browsers for things that really aren't that important. They're not storing banking information. They're not storing personal data that the hackers want to get hold of. So what you really want to use is a password manager.
Yeah.
These encrypt your passwords, and you've only got the one password to remember then. And obviously you want to make sure you don't write that down anywhere. Lots of password managers out there to consider. You could go on to which and so on for a recommendation which is the best to use, but there's lots out there. Are there any questions on that?
No, that's fine. I use LastPass.
Fantastic. Yes, there's Dashlane, there's Keeper, isn't there? There's a lot out there. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, so passwords, of course, are insufficient on their own. So where you are storing your own personal data or someone else's data, it's very important that you use two-factor authentication. And this adds an additional layer of verification by requesting a code. So I recently had a customer who's had a very old Microsoft account, which had just been being left dormant, but the hackers guessed the password. But because she had two-factor authentication on that account, they couldn't get any further. So we were alerted to it and were able to immediately change the password. Now, two-factor authentication, the codes can be sent as a text message or to email, and you can choose these options if you want to. However, what often happens is if you're accessing an account on your mobile, those codes then get sent to the same device. So your security is completely gone. Because if someone has stolen your phone, for example, then obviously that code is going to that mobile. Same as well, if you get the code sent to an email account, if that email account is hacked, so do the codes. They have access then to the codes that are being sent to that email account. So what you really should use is an authenticator app, which will create codes for you, which you can use and enter into the relevant account. So there's Microsoft Authenticator and Google Authenticator and so on. And when you decide to set this up on the relevant account, the account will give you a QR code, which you scan from Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator to set that up. And then every time you try to access that account, it will ask for the code from the authenticator. And that is the most secure method of using a two-factor authentication, which I would highly recommend. So just
So does that not, sorry to interrupt,
that's fine.
is that not the same scenario then? If they've stolen your phone, they would just find it on the app?
No, because the authenticator has its own security. So you have something like a PIN or a fingerprint to actually access it.
Ah, right, okay. Because I don't use an authenticator app mainly because it's a pain in the backside.
Yes, unfortunately, security is, isn't it? It's like having an alarm on
Mm.
your home and double locking your front door. It's a pain,
Mm.
isn't it? And it's the same with IT security.
I
It's a
mean, I
pain.
do have two-factor on pretty much everything. I
Mm,
just don't use the app.
yeah. I mean,
Maybe I
obviously
will.
that's your choice, but that's what we would, we would recommend as
Yeah. It's
that.
nice to know the difference, really.
Yes. Whereas when the code, with an authenticator app, obviously you've got to put in the PIN or your fingerprint or whatever you're going to use. When the codes are sent to the text message, there's no protection there at all.
Okie dokie.
Just for those that are unsure of how the authenticator app works, so when you enter the login information into the relevant account you're accessing, if you've got two-factor authentication set up, then the account will ask for that particular code. And you then open up your authenticator app, obtain the code, enter the code, and then of course that then allows you into the account.
Okay.
Any more questions on that?
No.
Brilliant. Okay. Right, something else I want to talk about in this session is ransomware attacks. So ransomware is software, excuse me, that prevents you from accessing your data by encrypting it. So you could accidentally install ransomware onto your device from a link that you might get sent and that you've accidentally clicked on. And once your data is encrypted, criminals then use that to demand money to release the data that has been encrypted. So this is going to affect files stored on your PC, files connected, files stored on connected cloud storage, so that if you've got OneDrive constantly running, if you've got Dropbox constantly running, for example, they will also be affected. And if you've got any USB or hard drives plugged in, they will also be affected. So what you want to do is make sure that any USB or hard drives you've got connected is that you keep those unplugged when you're not using them. Ideally, you'd want to make sure that OneDrive and Dropbox, for example, aren't constantly running. But of course, that completely goes against the usefulness of them. Okay, so you don't really want to do that. So what you want to do then, of course, to protect yourself from a ransomware attack is make sure that you've always got a backup of everything. So always back up to a separate USB hard drive, everything on your cloud storage, and keep this disconnected from your PC. And then for absolute security, I would keep that away from the office as well, because you could have a fire or a burglary, but of course that's getting a bit dark, isn't it? But
belt and braces.
It's belt and braces, exactly, absolutely. And the most important thing to be aware, to think about with a ransomware attack is if you have a backup, you cannot be ransomed. What you would need to do is reset your PC, and then you would load all your files from your backup.
Right. That's interesting, is that? Because I do back up, but I probably don't back up as often as I should.
Yeah, you're probably right. Well, once a 6 months or something like that, or
Yeah, well, but yeah, once every 6 months probably.
yeah,
Or yeah, it's easier now because most of my stuff's on OneDrive.
yeah,
So actually I can get it all quite easily. But before I was using that, it was a bit like everything was a bit all over the place, and I got a new PC when I went to Windows 11.
mm,
So that sort of gave me the opportunity to have a clear out.
brilliant. Yeah,
So yeah, so it is actually a bit easier than it used to be. And I don't leave it connected. I just literally plug it in when I need it or plug it in when I'm doing a presentation, because I always take the presentation on a separate hard drive or
fantastic. Yeah,
training. Yeah, so that if I can't get my PC to work, I can use somebody else's.
yeah, brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, if you've got that backup, then you're covered really.
Yeah, no, that's good to know.
Mm.
Might encourage me to do it a bit more often.
Yes, because you're right. From OneDrive, all you've got to do is just select everything and just copy it all over and just leave it
Yeah.
overnight, or leave it while you're having lunch or something. So
Yeah.
very straightforward. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so moving on from ransomware attack is a feature that I would like to explain to you. This is Microsoft's Personal Vault, and this is available with a personal Microsoft account and is available within OneDrive. This provides a folder to store files, but with extra security to open it. And this is good for saving information that the hackers want. So such as CVs, copies of passports when you're away, copies of travel insurance documents when you're on holiday, any financial information that you store on your OneDrive, and I could go on. All of these are great to store in the personal vault. And the personal vault will automatically lock. And by default, it's 20 minutes, although you can change that. And then, of course, that is not subject to a ransomware attack if that was to happen, unless you're just unlucky it's open at that moment. Okay. So just to show you my personal vault. So I've got my personal OneDrive here, and you can see there that I've got a folder called Personal Vault, and it's currently locked.
Mhm.
If I double click on that, now you won't see this, but I now have to enter in a PIN in order to open that up. And that will then open that up in a separate window. And there you can see at the top there, I'm in OneDrive, personal, Susan Personal, Personal Vault. And you can see I store my CV, my personal accounts, and various other information in there. And
That's interesting because I don't use OneDrive, which obviously I say I use Google Drive, but I don't really know the difference between the two, or are they the same? They're just different versions.
yes, one is Google's and one is Microsoft's. Absolutely.
Mhm.
The Google Drive you access via browser, is that right? And then obviously OneDrive you can access from your PC. So, and it's
Mm. And if I was to switch to OneDrive, because obviously now I've got 365, if I was to change to that, do I need to just start doing everything into OneDrive from now on, or do I transfer everything from Google Drive into OneDrive?
totally up to you. I mean, you could make use of both if you wanted to. It's quite useful for pictures if you've got a lot of photos, to have photos in Google Drive and files in OneDrive, for example. It's totally up to you, your usage really.
Mm.
Obviously I'm Microsoft based, so everything is in OneDrive.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but obviously that's totally up to you.
Okie dokie. But I would have access to that personal vault anyway, wouldn't I? Because I've got the personal account, I think.
Yes,
I think you set that up for me, didn't you?
yeah, I can't really remember, but I think it was a personal account. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay. Right. Okay. Another thing to talk about is thinking about when you're connecting to the internet. So, worth considering your security when you're accessing the internet, when you're in a cafe or when you're in a shopping centre or you're in an airport and so on. And when you're using open Wi-Fi on trains and so on. Very importantly, don't access banking apps on an open Wi-Fi.
Mm.
Pretty obvious, really. If you are abroad or in the UK and you're suspicious of any sort of open Wi-Fi, then it's a good idea to use a VPN. So VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and this gives you a secure and encrypted connection over the internet. And what you basically have is your own tunnel, your own tube that your data travels on, and nobody else can access it. There are lots of companies that provide VPNs out there, and you probably have heard lots of ads for them. And again, you could use which and so on to find out which would be the best one to use. However, from a Microsoft point of view, just wanted to let you know that Edge actually has its own VPN that you could use. So I'll just show you that if I can find.
So just going on to that from my personal point of view, I have I can't remember what it is, but I have a VPN
Excellent.
because purely and simply, if I'm trying to log into a client's LinkedIn account, LinkedIn LinkedIn would flag up if I have a client in Cornwall and I'm trying to log in from Harrogate. They would see that the IP address is not the same, and
Mm.
it would probably let me log in 2 or 3 times, and then it would start having a bit of a hissy fit, basically. So I have to use a VPN for that. But are you saying if I was to log in from Microsoft Edge, that
Yeah.
wouldn't actually happen?
That I don't know because obviously I don't know about LinkedIn and how that works. But it does. It does have a VPN facility.
That's interesting, is that?
Mm.
Okay, thank you. I'll have a little ponder on that one.
Okay, so just to show you where you set that up, in Edge. if you go to three dots and settings, and then go to privacy, search and services, and then to security. And if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see there is the option there to turn on Microsoft Edge Secure Network. And that gives you 5 gigabytes of data across that VPN.
Okay, Microsoft Edge Secure Network.
So I recently had a customer who went abroad, wanted a VPN, and so she used that. So it is obviously everything then has to go through Edge. So if you're accessing your email, you need to do that online. If you're accessing any accounts of whatsoever, then you need to do that all via Edge. Otherwise,
That's also good to know because sometimes you're out and about and you do need to transfer some money or something, don't you? I try not to unless it's a private. But when we were away, some of the other people that we were with were just transferring money left, right, and centre, and I kept thinking, surely you've opened yourself up to other people looking into your account and things.
Did they do that on Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Open, just wherever they were.
Mm.
I don't know if they had a VPN. I don't know if they were using Microsoft Edge. I don't know. But I remembered thinking, because I used to say to them, I'm not doing it until I get back to base where I can go on the private.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea.
Sure.
Yeah, makes sense.
Interesting. Thank you.
That's no pleasure. Another thing to think about as well is people connecting to the internet from your own Wi-Fi when at home. When you have visitors to your house, do you give people access the Wi-Fi password?
Always, because they have workshops.
Yeah, right. Okay, so what you want to do then is set up a guest Wi-Fi on your router.
Okay.
And then you have a different password for that. And then they don't have access to your home network.
Okie dokie. Yeah, that's a good one.
So obviously that's something we can help you set up. Or there are lots of people out there to be able to set that up for you. Also, I've heard, not that I'm aware of it, but I've heard that there are some broadband companies who provide routers that will actually do that as part of the setup. And it's
I
actually,
was just wondering if I spoke to my provider, if they do that.
yeah, they would be able to tell you how to do it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And then always give your guests access
That
to
one.
that
Yeah.
Wi-Fi, not your home one. Right. Any questions on that at all?
No.
Okay, lovely. Now, of course, also when we're out and about, we plug into USB ports in public locations. And do you know if that USB port is secure? Has it been hacked? Would you know?
No.
So what you really ideally want to do is use a plug-in charger because data cannot go across the charger.
Right. Okay.
So most, when you plug into plug in on a train or somewhere like that, they also have a plug as well as a USB port, and you're better to use the plug-in charger. Or if you prefer to use the USB port, you might want to buy yourself a USB blocker, and that will stop the data going across that USB connection.
So I suppose does that work the other way as well? Because I know sometimes if I go into businesses, maybe a certain type of business or even a university or college, sometimes they don't want you to use your USB in case you've been hacked or got any malware on there. That wouldn't work that way, would it?
No, this is just where we're charging up a phone or
Charging a phone.
or a PC or something like that.
Yeah, okay, got that. Thank you.
Just be aware that I've been told on numerous occasions that these US blockers do reduce fast charging. So that's where your plug-in is usually the better option.
Right, okay. Plug-in charger. Lovely.
Good. Just a few things to mention about PC security. We've obviously talked about ransomware and making sure we've always got a backup of everything. But a couple of other things to mention is just change to that page, make sure I've got everything, is to always update your PC when requested. These updates contain security updates. So they're not always new feature updates. Most of the time, they provide you with the latest protection for your PC. And I always find it's really scary when people tell me, oh no, I haven't updated for 6 months. And I try and persuade them they've got to do it because it's absolutely vital that their PC is protected. Always ensure that the login password or the PIN you use to access your PC is secure. Don't write that down. So a nice memorable PIN is much better. Then it goes without saying is to use virus protection software. And the diagram there is just of the Windows virus protection that comes automatically with a Windows PC if you wanted to use that. Obviously, you could use other providers if you prefer, but we do find that they do slow down Windows PCs. So you can use Windows security instead.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, save everything to cloud storage. So don't store anything on the PC, just in case anything happens to the PC. At least you've got it all in the cloud. And then obviously we've now talked about backups. You'll have it on your backup as well. Always make sure that any software that you install on your PC, you install from the Microsoft Store or the Apple Store. If you are going to use links from websites, do obviously make sure you're absolutely sure you're on the right website and that you know that link is safe.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on any of that?
No, that's fine.
Good. Just to talk about mobile security, just make sure that you use biometrics such as a fingerprint to secure apps such as banking apps, Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, and so on.
Yeah.
If your phone was stolen, is everything backed up to the cloud, including your contacts? Do you store them locally, or do they get stored up to your Google account, for example?
Yeah.
Can you quickly contact your bank if you needed to? If you felt that maybe your banking app was compromised, can you let them know?
Yeah.
And again, only install apps from the Google or Apple stores.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Any questions about that?
No.
Brilliant. Okay, so in conclusion, unfortunately, criminals are constantly inventing new methods to make money or disrupt business. Unfortunately, it's just the same as we protect our houses. It's the same with our IT as well. Don't want to make it sound scary because your IT is there to help your business and help you to speed things up, but you do need to be constantly vigilant. And you also need to keep up to date on the latest security features. And also, just a reminder again, you cannot be ransomed if you have a backup.
I didn't really realize that. I mean, I suppose it makes sense, doesn't it? But you don't realize that it's actually that simple.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, quite. Yeah. Fantastic. Any questions?
No, that was really interesting. I've made a few notes of things that I need to do or check. And obviously I will be backing up more regularly.
Fantastic. I'm very pleased to hear that.
Well, to be fair, it's probably the easiest and best tip you could probably give anybody because we all know we should back up, but actually that's the incentive to back up, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Because you do not want to give those criminals any money.
No.
And there's no guarantee that they won't then come back and say, right, we want another lot.
Yeah, exactly. And I hadn't realized it was that simple to stop them. So yeah, I'll be backing up much more regularly now.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, fantastic. All right, just to finish off then, just a little bit about my services.
Yeah.
So I provide Microsoft 365 support and training, on-hand support for your software, and you can update your skills with online training courses, and monthly packages are available. In the
Fantastic.
meantime, if you're thinking about all of this, you might like to sign up to my newsletter for top tips on Microsoft 365 features, up-to-date news on what's new in Microsoft 365 and Windows 11, and also Course of the Month suggestions, and plus information about what we're up to at First Call. And this is all available via my website/subscribe.
No, that's brilliant. And of course, I have used you personally, so I can recommend you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Sorting out your Microsoft account was great, was really good, wasn't it? It was really,
Well, yeah, it needed doing.
yeah, brilliant.
No, that's great. Thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you very much for attending, and obviously do give me a shout if you've got any further questions on anything that I've just covered.
No, fabulous.